In June 2021, Microsoft made an announcement that sent a shockwave through the tech world. They introduced Windows 11. It was sleek, it was modern, it had rounded corners, but buried in the system requirements was a small detail that would condemn millions of perfectly functional computers to the screen. The requirement was TPM Vinci, this tiny security chip, which many older but still powerful PCs didn't have enabled or didn't have at all, became the gatekeeper. Overnight, a 2017 Intel i7 processor, capable of editing 4K video and running complex simulations, was declared obsolete by Microsoft. It was electronic waste. This wasn't because the hardware was slow. It wasn't because it couldn't run the code. It was an arbitrary line drawn in the silicon sand. This event is the most egregious example of planned obsolescence in modern history. We usually associate this term with light bulbs that burn out too fast or iPhones that slow down after 2 years. But software-driven obsolescence is far more insidious. It allows a company to reach into your home via the internet and effectively break a device that you own simply by refusing to support it. Microsoft argues it is for security. Critics argue it is a conspiracy to boost falling PC sales and force a global hardware refresh cycle that the planet cannot afford. Today, we are going to investigate the e-waste bomb caused by Windows 11, the technical truth behind TPM 2.0, and why your computer isn't actually yours anymore. Before we tear apart the motherboard of this controversy, if you believe that technology should be built to last, not to be replaced, verify your subscription. We fight for the right to repair and the right to use what we own. To understand the scale of this, we need to look at the numbers. When Windows 11 launched, it was estimated that 40% of all enterprise workstations did not meet the CPU requirements. We are talking about hundreds of millions of computers. These weren't ancient beige boxers running Windows 95. These were Surface Pros, Dell XPSs, and gaming rigs bought just 3 or 4 years prior. The frustration was palpable. People tried to install the OS, only to be met with a cold message. This PC couldn't run Windows 11. Why? Because Microsoft decided to cut off support for anything older than Intel's 8th Gen processors or AMD's Ryzen 2000 series. The official reason is security. Microsoft claims that older chips lack the hardware enhancements necessary to protect against modern firmware attacks. They point to Spectre and Meltdown, vulnerabilities discovered in 2080 that affect the CPU architecture itself. They argue that to make Windows truly secure, they need to enforce a virtualization-based security model that relies heavily on TPM 2.0 trusted platform module and newer CPU instructions like MBEC mode-based execution control. And technically, they are not lying. These features make the system more secure. VBS isolates the secure kernel from the rest of the OS, making it much harder for malware to steal credentials, even if it gets admin rights. However, the security absolutist argument falls apart when you look at the reality of risk. Is a Windows 10 PC running on a 7th Gen i7 insecure? Not really. It still receives security updates until 2025. It runs antivirus. It has a firewall. The incremental security gain of Windows 11 is valuable for a high-value target like a CEO or a defense contractor. But for a student writing essays or a grandma checking Facebook, it is overkill. It is like requiring everyone to drive a tank because tanks are safer than sedans. Sure, tanks are safer, but banning sedans creates a massive logistical and economic crisis. The economic angle is where the cynicism kicks in. The PC market had been stagnating for a decade before the pandemic. Then COVID-19 hit and everyone bought a laptop. Sales spiked. But by 2021, the boom was over. Microsoft and its hardware partners, Intel, AMD, Dell, and Sampumona, needed a new reason to make people buy computers. Windows 11 was that reason. It was a stimulus package for the hardware industry, paid for by the consumer. By artificially deprecating hardware, they created demand out of thin air. This is the definition of planned obsolescence. Designing a product with an artificially limited useful life so it will become obsolete. But the environmental cost is the real crime. E-waste is the fastest-growing waste stream in the world. Computers contain gold, silver, copper, rare earth elements, and toxic chemicals like lead and mercury. When a PC is scrapped, very little of this is recovered. Most of it ends up in landfills in the global south, poisoning the water and the soil. By forcing the retirement of millions of perfectly good PCs, Microsoft is directly contributing to an ecological disaster. A computer's carbon footprint is mostly in its manufacturing, about 80%. Using a computer for 8 years instead of 4 halves its environmental impact. Microsoft talks a big game about being carbon negative by 2030, but their software policies are driving consumption that contradicts their climate goals. There is a rebellion brewing, though. The tech community didn't just accept this. Almost immediately, workarounds appeared. Rufus, a popular tool for creating bootable USB drives, added an option to strip the TPM and CPU checks from the Windows 11 installer. You can install Windows 11 on a 10-year-old PC and it runs fine. Perfectly fine. This proves that the incompatibility is a policy decision, not a technical limitation. Microsoft knows about these bypasses. They even published a registry hack to allow it, but with a menacing disclaimer, you may not be entitled to receive updates. It's a threat. Do it at your own risk. They are tolerating the rebels because they need the market share, but they are keeping the official gate locked. And then there is the Linux alternative. For millions of users, the end of Windows 10 support in October 2025 will be the moment they finally switch. A PC that is too old for Windows 11 is a supercomputer for Linux Mint or Ubuntu. Linux doesn't have arbitrary hardware cliffs. It runs on toasters. It runs on the Mars rover. It runs on your 2012 laptop faster than Windows ever did. We might see a massive migration to Linux, or at least to Chrome OS Flex, Google's version of Chrome OS that can be installed on old PCs, effectively turning old Windows machines into Chromebooks. The future of the PC is becoming a walled garden. Microsoft is following Apple's lead. Apple has always been aggressive about dropping support for old hardware, but they control the entire stack. Microsoft is trying to exert that same control over an open ecosystem. They are pushing for the Pluton security processor, which is built directly into the CPU, further tightening the integration between hardware and OS. This makes the PC more like an iPhone 6. Yes, but also locked down, unmodifiable, and disposable. This trend of software-defined obsolescence isn't stopping at PCs. We see it in smart TVs that stop getting app updates after 3 years. We see it in cars where the infotainment system becomes laggy and unsupported. We are moving toward a world where you don't own your devices. You are merely leasing the functionality until the manufacturer decides to turn it off. It is an assault on property rights. If I buy a computer, I should be the one to decide when it is obsolete, based on whether it still does the job I need it to do. So, what can you do? First, don't throw away your old PC. If it can't run Windows 11, install Linux. Breathe new life into it. Give it to a school or a charity that can use it. Second, support the right to repair movement. This movement fights for legislation that forces companies to provide parts, manuals, and software support for longer periods. And finally, vote with your wallet. If a company has a history of premature obsolescence, consider alternatives. Framework, for example, makes modular laptops that are designed to be upgraded forever. The Windows 11 controversy is a wake-up call. It reminds us that in the digital age, hardware is nothing without software. And whoever controls the software controls the lifespan of the hardware. We need to demand sustainable software engineering. We need to demand operating systems that respect the resources of the planet and the wallets of the users. Otherwise, we are just building a mountain of digital trash for future generations to mine. If this deep dive into the ethics of technology resonated with you, if you want to understand the forces shaping the devices on your desk, make sure you are subscribed. We don't just review tech, we analyze its impact. Share this video with anyone who is confused about why their good computer is suddenly bad. Knowledge is the only upgrade that never becomes obsolete.